Hi, I'm Estela Hernandez with OCPA, and today I'm joined with Tina Korbe Dzurisin. Thank you, Tina, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
We have been reading so much on actually having conversations about a hot topic issue in Oklahoma, and not just in our state, but also across the country, which has to do with the gender pay gap for women. And in the most recent article, you gave us your perspective, your journey as a career woman in the workforce. You are a former director of communications, a wife, and a mother of two. So your perspective is definitely needed in this conversation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you again for having me. And as I wrote in the article, I started my career in communications and in journalism, and eventually was a director of communications, and decided at two different points in my career. One, that I wanted to take a pay cut to work saner hours. And then secondly, when I was 8 months pregnant with my first child, I knew that I really did want to dedicate myself full time to raising my children, to ordering my home. And meanwhile, my husband, who is a drilling engineer, just continued to work steadily. As he advanced in his career, his compensation increased accordingly. So I always joke, that the pay gap widened between my husband and me, and employer discrimination had nothing to do with it. Obviously, my position as a stay-at-home mother didn't come with a comparable salary as my position as a director of communications. And to me, that's not a problem. And I was very lucky, obviously, and blessed that I was able to make the choice to stay at home. But my point in illustrating just my own experience is that whenever we talk about the gender pay gap generally, there's always this nefarious undertone, this implication that women earn 77 cents on the dollar that men earn because either A, we're victims of a patriarchal culture that has pigeonholed us in these roles that are not as high paying, or these caretaking roles that require us to drop out of the workforce for a period of time, or B, we're victims of employer discrimination. And I'm bringing up my own experience to say that's often not the case. Often the case is that women think and act for themselves, and we don't think we're reducible to our material compensation. We believe that we're more than our salary, and that life is about more than money. We're not building our entire careers around the idea that we want to eliminate the gender pay gap. And so we make choices that sometimes the market rewards with less money, but life rewards in other ways. And I just want to continue to make that point, because I think sometimes women almost feel a sense of guilt if they're not pursuing a lucrative, high-paying career, as though they're somehow betraying the cause of male and female equality, when that's not the case. We're just simply acknowledging, again, that life is about more than just our material well-being, and that there are trade-offs, and sometimes we make choices that result in a lower salary for the sake of other benefits.
Absolutely, and that's a great perspective. Now, it's important to note that when we do have this conversation, that a pay gap truly does exist.
It does, yes.
According to the Government
Yes.
Accountability Office, they do note that there is a 20% pay gap between men and women. And that while women have made significant progress in the last 3 decades, and that women actually have higher levels of education
Yes.
when you compare it to men. So it's important to note that it's not that we are victims in this
Right.
situation, but more so, like you mentioned, it's a matter of choices. But if you can also give us a little bit about the background as to how did that happen? How does that come about? Because the GAO, as we mentioned, cannot give any, you can say, a direction on what we should do about this problem.
Right.
So they themselves are acknowledging that while we do have a gap, they cannot give a direct reason as to why the gap exists.
Right. First of all, I completely agree with you that we need to acknowledge that the gap exists. I think that's particularly important for conservatives, because while when you do account for education, choice, occupation, a variety of other factors, that gap does shrink, and so to as low as 5 cents on the dollar, and some people even say that maybe a difference in other benefits like healthcare benefits, that sort of thing, might account for that remaining 5 cents. That's important, but overall, still, as you said, the GAO has established that there is in fact a pay gap. To me, it arises because even in 2016, I like to joke about this, women are still more likely than men to bear and birth children. I mean, that is still the reality. And so that causes us to make different choices. It's not that women are always taking time out of the workforce to care for children. Sometimes they're caring for elderly relatives. Sometimes they just want, like I said, more workplace flexibility. They want to be able to travel or pursue hobbies or enrich the culture. So there might be a wide variety of reasons, but it is known that women are more likely than men to take time out of the workforce. And again, when you hear people say that sentence, women are more likely to take time out of the workforce to care for children, it's almost like, oh, poor women, they have to take time out of the workforce to care for children. But here's a little known secret. Most women really love their babies and they want to be around them. They recognize that there's a very precious short season in which they're little, and so they're going to make some changes. And like I said, maybe it doesn't always involve quitting your job. Maybe it's just that you want to work saner hours, or you want to work from home, or whatever it is. But you accept some of those trade-offs. And so my thought on it is, we just need to stop posing the pay gap problematically and just ask the question: are individual women satisfied with the way their lives are going? And I would venture to guess that particularly among the college-educated cohort who are voluntarily making the decision to opt out, and that opt-out decision has been increasing. Those statistics, I mean, there's been a loss of 1.6 million skilled workers in the past few years. That has been because women have wanted to stay home. It's not because they haven't had any other option. And I think we need to be celebrating that. I think it's actually a beautiful thing that there are women who are willing to make a sacrifice on the monetary side for the sake of raising the next generation of workers even. I mean, if you want to make that economic argument, there's even a case that inculcating the habits of industry and order in your children might end up resulting in a bigger GDP in the future, because those children might grow up and be really huge contributors. So it's still a huge backbone of our economy and culture to do work that's not compensated with money, whether that's raising children or a variety of other kinds of work that the market doesn't reward as well.
And I think women overall take pride in having that ability to choose, and not allowing our society to kind of force us and pigeonhole us to make certain choices because that's what's expected of us. But also, if you'll also speak to us about the choices that we make, that there are certain careers that actually hold more risk when it comes to men and women, and that women tend to go to certain careers that actually have less risk.
Right. Mark Perry, who's a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, has coined a term called Equal Occupational Fatality Day. And it's a counterpoint to the Equal Pay Day that we hear about, where a woman would have to work an additional 4 months into the next year to finally have earned as much as men earned the previous year. Well, in 2014, 14 men died on the job to every 1 woman. So Mark Perry's saying, if we went to Equal Occupational Fatality Day, women would have to work until 2017 before as many women would have died on the job as men died in 2014. Because, as you said, women tend to gravitate towards certain industries and men gravitate toward other industries. Women will work often in like education, healthcare, office support. Not a lot of on-the-job risk there or hazard to your actual physical health, whereas men will work in coal mining, firefighting, construction, where there is more of a physical hazard, and the market's going to reward high-risk industries more than low-risk industries precisely because fewer laborers are willing to work in those high-risk industries. So as dramatic as it sounds to say this, on some level, if you say, we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that women are earning as much money as men, what you're really saying, again, is that you think women should be making different choices. They should be going to work as roughnecks, as coal miners, as firefighters, as construction workers. They shouldn't be taking time out to care for their children or elderly relatives. So really, on some level, this equal pay for equal work slogan, which again, to clarify, we all agree women should receive equal pay for equal work, but it's actually political pandering. It sounds good, but it obscures the reality that women are actually getting paid equal pay for equal work already, but they're making different choices than men, and we're happy with the choices that we're making. We're not victims. We're glad to have the ability to make those choices.
Tina, if you can speak to us a little bit about the laws in the books right now that does protect women, that ensures that women do have equal pay.
Right. To reiterate, as we've said up to this point, that women deserve equal pay for equal work. No one seriously proposes otherwise. Men and women are equal in inherent human dignity. We all recognize that, and it is currently already illegal for an employer to unjustly discriminate against women in the workplace in terms of salary. If an employer were to pay a woman with equal qualifications doing the same work less than he paid a man, or he or she paid a man, that would be an offense that that employee could sue over already.
Correct. And so that's the part of the conversation that I truly feel that individuals are not looking at, and really just looking at the political side, that women are victims when it comes to this conversation. Right. So we need to look at all perspectives.
Right. To say equal pay for equal work is a slogan that sounds really good, and in an election year in particular, it helps to kind of curry favor with female voters who maybe, if you don't already realize that women do receive equal pay for equal work, you might be kind of falling for that. But also just to make sure that we are very precise about this. I'm not at all trying to say that women should not be pursuing a STEM degree or a career, a lucrative, high-paying career, or a high-risk career. I mean, whatever. Those are all wonderful options as well. We're just simply saying that women do make choices that sometimes result in less monetary compensation, and it's not because they're victims. That's it's right. Because they're freely choosing to sacrifice on the monetary side for the sake of something else.
You know, and we make up over 50% of the electorate. And so it's important that as we have these conversations about women, individuals will box them in and say these are women issues. Right. But really these are American issues.
Yes.
When we are that large of the population, and what we actually bring to the table, it is a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about this hot button issue. And I'm sure that it's going to continue all throughout until Election Day and even forward. So appreciate your perspective.